There's an organization that is as old as the courts of Pharaoh. Within the courts of the Pharaohs, an organization called the Illuminati was founded. The Illuminati literally means illuminated ones. These individuals literally have a personal relationship with Satan the devil, whose name was Lucifer to begin with. Lucifer rebelled against God, and when Lucifer rebelled against God, his name was changed to the adversary, or the name Satan. This Illuminati can be traced all the way down through the Rosicrucians right up to the very day and the moment that I'm speaking. Their own literature talks about the Illuminati. They are a part of that Illuminati. The modern day manifestation of the Illuminati was founded on May 1st, 1776 by a Dr. Adam Weishaupt in Germany. Dr. Adam Weishaupt literally was a professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University in Bavaria, Germany. This man was born of Jewish background. He was converted to Roman Catholicism. Then he left the Catholic Church. He founded his own organization. This man was a mystic. He worshiped Satan, or as he preferred to call the person Lucifer. He knew all the depths of Satanism and the program for world government that the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, high-ranking Freemasonry, and the other secret societies have been working to achieve. I think it's very important that we clarify the real meaning of the name of Adam Weishaupt's secret society called the Illuminati. I think this is very significant. The name literally implies that those who are members of the Illuminati, they are the only members of the human race who are enlightened. In other words, Lucifer has given them ultimate wisdom. They feel that they are the only intelligentsia in the world, the only people with the capacity and the knowledge, the insight and understanding that's absolutely necessary to govern the world. Lucifer wants to be worshiped. He rebelled against God, and that's recorded in Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel 28. He wants to be the one to bring world government and world peace, and he wants it to be a counterfeit of what God Almighty is going to do through His Son, Jesus Christ. The avowed purpose of the Illuminati and their goal is to establish a novus ordo seclorum. This literally means a new world order or one world government. You can look on the back of any $1 bill put out by the Federal Reserve System in the United States of America, and it'll state clearly on it, Novus Ordo Seclorum. There will be a pyramid, and the capstone is set off from it. This particular capstone will not be put on the pyramid until Lucifer and his cohorts have established their world government. The name Illuminati is literally derived from the name Lucifer, meaning bearer of the light, or of a person of extraordinary brilliance. This is who Adam Weishaupt thought he was, a personal representative of Lucifer. Public attention was first drawn to the Illuminati, those in Bavaria, Germany, and their diabolical plot for world government as a direct result of a bizarre accident that took place in 1785. History records that a courier carrying important Illuminati documentation, his name was Lanze, L-A-N-Z-E. He was racing on horseback from Frankfurt, Germany to Paris, France. Lightning struck him. He was carrying all the documents for the upcoming French Revolution and the Illuminati's world government plans right on down to the close of the age. These documents were to be sent to the Grand Orient Masons in Paris, France, who were planning the French Revolution with its reign of terror that did occur in 1789. When this man was actually struck by lightning, all these documents were found on his body, And it revealed that these conspirators had worldwide aims, not just aims for a government in Germany. As a direct result, the Bavarian government sent all of the documents in book form, which they compile to every government on the continent of Europe. Now, this is very important that you understand the background I'm giving you today, or else you'll not understand the meaning of world events around us the very moment in which we're living today. Those individuals who went into this organization called the Illuminati, they were initiated into the outer rings. They were never told the true purposes of the Illuminati. They were only told that it was a benevolent organization they wanted to make of the human race without any distinction between nations or their condition in life, whether they were wealthy or poor, whatever profession they had. They were to be one good and happy family for the entire human race. All these initiates were required to take an oath. This oath would absolutely bind them to perpetual silence. They could never reveal the secrets of the Illuminati, because within the framework of this oath that they took, it actually stated, without any qualifications, that once a person went into the Illuminati and they were revealed certain secrets, that if they ever revealed them, their brothers in the Illuminati would seek them out and kill them. Their life was never again to be their own. Within the oath, they were absolutely sworn that they would give up their own private judgment. They would only follow the orders of their superiors above them. That way, everything you owned, you did, went for the good and the aims of the order of the Illuminati. By the time the member had reached the inner circle, these oaths of absolute secrecy and unquestioning obedience became deadly serious. It was only when you came to the very inner rings of the Illuminati where you revealed the secrets of that organization. Those secrets were sevenfold. Number one, the abolition of all ordered governments. Have we seen in the 20th century revolution after revolution around the world? And it's called international socialism or communism. Have we seen in the Bible in Revelation chapter 6 verse the second horse called the red horse? What was the very purpose for the red horse of the apocalypse? Number one, to take peace from the earth. When you take peace from the earth, it's called revolutions. It's called warfare. And the second purpose was to kill mankind. And every single communist government that's overthrown a nation, they kill anywhere from 1/3 to half the population. That's the goal of the Illuminati by the year 2000, to wipe out up to half the population of planet Earth. And they plan on using a third world war with thermonuclear weapons to achieve their goal. And you know what? That's exactly what it says in the book of Revelation chapter 9. Right down the line, everything the Illuminati or those who worship Lucifer are doing is listed right in the pages of your Bible. A second part of their revolutionary program, they wanted to abolish private property. What have we seen in every country that became socialist communist? The state owns it. What do we see in the United States of America today? Do you own your home? If you don't pay your taxes, you don't, do you? See, in free societies, they let you think you own your home. But then if you don't pay the taxes, the government confiscates it, sells it off, and then they collect their taxes, but you don't have a home to live in. So this is one of the 10 planks to the Communist Manifesto that has already been placed intact in the United States of America. Third, they said they wanted to abolish all inheritance, so that eventually all the wealthy, when they died, their children would not be able to accumulate their fortunes, because everybody in the world had to be level to the same subsistence of living. Everybody would be equal. That was their goal, to make of the human race equality. Haven't we seen that since the 1960s in the United States? Haven't we heard of equal rights, equal opportunity? This is exactly where it came from, as far back as 1829, I will prove it before I'm through. The fourth part of their sevenfold operation was to abolish patriotism in every country on the face of the earth. Is that happening in the United States of America? Yes, it is. People don't sing about God. They don't talk about the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. They don't sing when they go to the sporting games and they hear the national anthem played. They're embarrassed. And then in the schools, they're even trying to get the Pledge of Allegiance taken out of the schools. They've already taken prayer. A fifth part of their program for world government, they wanted to abolish all religion. What was it the communists said? Take religion out of the schools in America. Give us 2 generations without God, we'll have your country. How long's it been, America? Have they about got us? Before I'm through, you'll say with me, they've got us. Number 6, they wanted to abolish the family. When you have strong, stable families, you will not have subjugations of people. When you have morality, you don't have the subjugation of people because they're strong. They stand for principle. And the 7th point was that they wanted to create a world government. The Protestant princes and the rulers of Germany and Europe at that time were very pleased with Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati because his goal was to destroy the Catholic Church. And of course, they wanted that also since they had broken from that religion. Something happened, though, that was very important, and historians will not tell this to you. In 1777, Adam Weishaupt was initiated into the highest ranks of Freemasonry in Europe. Then something else happened on the 16th of July, 1782. There was a Congress of Wilhelmsbad. This was all the high-ranking Freemasons in the world meeting together. They forged an alliance between the Illuminati and Freemasonry. It was finally sealed. They became one organization, not down in the lower ranks, the 32nd, the 31st, and the 30th degrees, all the way down. They were to know nothing about it. This was the honorary degree of 33rd. They would be hand-selected from the 33rd degree and told the secrets of the Illuminati and High Freemasonry for world government. One man who left that particular Congress of Wilhelmsbad had an autobiography written about him. He said that he was sworn to secrecy, and even though he was sworn to secrecy, he would only make one statement. He said that Freemasonry, the secrets that were forged that day, were so awful and they were so well thought out that over the next 100 or 200 or 300 years, they would actually take the world, and there was no way any government or church organization on earth would be able to resist it. From that day forward, the Comte de Vero said that he spoke about Freemasonry only in horror. Now, this is not the ordinary people in the lower ranks of the Illuminati. Something else happened on the way to modern day. In 1829, an American Illuminatus, a woman by the name of Frances Fanny Wright, came from England to New York City. She met with all the nihilists, all the atheists, all the revolutionaries the world over. She brought for the first time the advocacy of something called communism. She said that communism was now to be the very idea through which all the revolutionaries the world over would join hands in order to create the final world government. So for the first time in New York City, Frances Fanny Wright actually used the word communist and communism. Notice some of the things that she revealed. All those who were a part of this Illuminati program, and they were to secretly go into education, the political, they were to infiltrate education, every facet of business. And here's what they were to promote. And see if you have ever heard these phrases in the lifetime that you've lived. They said they would promote communism and make it more palatable, where they would be able to swallow it better by using labels such as equal opportunity. Have you heard that any time since the 1960s? They said they would use the phrase equal rights to make everybody in the world equal, even though they admit nobody's equal. Everybody is different. They said they would use the term atheism. Have we heard that term in the 20th century? They said that they would emancipate women from the home. Has there been a stringent effort in the 20th century to emancipate women from the home, to put them in the workplace? Then they said they would encourage free love. In other words, the breakdown of the family unit. Because a society which becomes immoral is easy to be overthrown for world government. Anyone who looks in the book of Revelation chapter 13 knows that it talks about the rise of an end-time system. And it says Satan is the very one, that great red dragon, that's giving rise to this system. And anyone who denies it after reading the Bible, Satan the devil is behind it. All you have to do is find where Satan's working, and you'll see the fulfillment of Bible prophecy jumping right off the pages at you. But if you don't know where it's coming from, you won't understand Bible prophecy. Those present in New York at that time were informed that the Illuminati intended to unite all the nihilists and the atheists. These are all world revolutionary groups with all the subversive organizations on the continent of Europe into a single international organization known as communism. This new destructive force was literally what was going to be used to foment wars and revolutions in the 20th century. And that's exactly what the book of Revelation says by the red horse of the apocalypse. That's exactly what Jesus Christ said in Matthew chapter 24. He said there would be wars and rumors of wars. And it's happened in the 20th century. A man by the name of Clinton Roosevelt was the very individual who was to head up the raising of funds for the Illuminati in the United States of America. It's interesting that Clinton Roosevelt is a direct ancestor of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who brought in the New Deal, which was the first attempt of a full-fledged socialization or communization of the United States of America. Two other men, in addition to Clinton Roosevelt, was Charles Dana and Horace Greeley, who were appointed to raise the funds for this organization. In 1834, Giuseppe Mazzini, the Italian revolutionary, was appointed the head of the Illuminati after the death of the leader, Adam Weishaupt. He then stayed in charge of the revolutionary organization until the year 1872, when he died. About the same time, a very obscure intellectual by the name of Moses Mordecai Marx Levy came on the scene. His name, his alias, is Karl Marx. He joined one of the branches of the Illuminati conspiracy for world government known as the League of the Just. In 1847, he was hired by the Illuminati because he never had a single original idea in his own life. He was hired by the Illuminati to bring an update to Adam Weishaupt's program. And it became known as the Communist Manifesto. And this is nothing more than a policy statement of the overall goals and purposes of the Illuminati. The next important personality that came on the scene, so that you can understand events of the 20th century, was an American. He was a satanic conspirator. He worshiped Satan by name. His name was Albert Pike from Little Rock, Arkansas. He was selected by Giuseppe Mazzini to head their operations in the United States, preparing for world government. Albert Pike was a very evil genius of the first magnitude. This man had many talents. He spoke 16 ancient languages to perfection. He was a avowed worshiper of Satan by name, who engaged in necromancy and all forms of sorcery. This man is buried 13 blocks from the Capitol of the United States of America, the White House. He is the only member of the Freemasonic order who has been entombed above ground and his body perpetuated to this day inside his own shrine in the Capitol of the United States. As the very top Illuminati agents, Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini began to work in unison, in consistent agreement. Albert Pike literally took control of the religious or theosophical side of their operations worldwide, while Giuseppe Mazzini of Italy was in charge of the political organization. When the Grand Orient Lodge of Freemasonry in Europe became suspect because of Mazzini's revolutionary activities, Mazzini presented a master plan to Albert Pike, who by that time had worked his way to the very top of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry. Giuseppe Mazzini's plan was very simple, because he knew that the very various organizations of Freemasonry were not to be disturbed. So in a letter which was dated January 22nd, 1870, written to Albert Pike, I quote, "We must allow all the federations to continue just as they are, with their systems, their central authorities, and their diverse modes of correspondence between high grades of the same rite, organized as they are at present." In other words, don't disturb the lower ranks of Freemasonry. They don't know anything about what we're doing anyway. But, he said, we, those of the top ranks of the Illuminati, must create a super rite which will remain unknown. It'll be totally secret from all people in the Masonic lodges around the world, to which we will call those Masons of high degree whom we shall select. That's why you can never hardly convince anyone in the lower ranks of Freemasonry that those at the top are using them and their organization in an evil way, because it's kept from them totally in secret. He went on to say, and I continue the quote, "With regard to our brothers in Masonry, these men must be pledges to the strictest secrecy. Through this supreme rite, we will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown." End of quote. This information was found in the book Occult Theocracy by Lady Queensborough of England. The Illuminati was not to tell that there was a super rite at the very top, and they would use all the lodges of Freemasonry to gather international information. And it would be a way to raise money to help the Illuminati purpose. A historian in Europe by the name of Domenico Margatti tells us the following, and I quote, "It was agreed that the existence of this rite would be kept strictly secret, and that no mention of it would ever be made in the assemblies of the lodges and inner shrines of other rites. Even when by accident the meeting might happen to be composed exclusively of brothers having the perfect initiation, In other words, the highest initiation. For the secret of the new institution was only to be divulged with the greatest caution to a chosen few belonging to the ordinary high grades. End of quote. And that was from his book, Andriano Lemmi, who literally replaced Mazzini upon his death. Albert Pike organized this ultra-secret organization under the name the New and Palladian Rite. He established 3 supreme councils, one in Charleston, South Carolina, another in Rome, Italy, and a third in Berlin, Germany. Another historian, a Dr. Batelli of Europe, wrote the following, quote, "This super rite, which is Masonic Luciferian Spiritism, must not be confused with the machinery of high masonry. Palladism is the cult of Satan in the inner shrines of a rite superimposed on all other rites. It is a cult, a religion." End of quote. One of Albert Pike's most famous works was an 861-page book called Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. In there, he literally stated on page 2 that force, unregulated, always just dissipated and came to nothing. But if the Illuminati would actually learn to control the proper forces, in other words, military apparatus, then he said that the great revolution prepared for by the ages will begin to march. End of quote, page 1 and 2 of that book. Now, it's very important you understand the next couple of statements I'm about to make. This will set the stage for the entirety of everything that's happening in the world today, in the 20th century. The theological or religious dogma of Albert Pike was laid out in his instructions. That was what it was called. He issued them on July 14, 1889. They were sent to the 23 supreme councils of the world. I will quote what he said. "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God." Ask any Freemason in America today. They'll tell you, yes, we worship God, Jesus Christ. But then when you go to the Middle East, find out what Bible or what books are in their shrines. The Quran, the Muslims, whatever religion is the religion of that nation, that's the holy book that's in their shrine. He went on to say, "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign, grand, instruction generals, we say this. You may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, 30th degrees. Yeah, we believe in a God." But you see, they won't tell them what God it is. Listen to what Albert Pike stated to those 23 instructors general. "The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine." And then he said, yes, Lucifer is God. They worship him and believe that Satan the devil is God. Now do you see why those who are behind international communism literally go at it fanatically, trying to set up their world government? They think they're doing what is right in the sight of their God, who is no God at all, but a fallen angel in rebellion against the true God and creator of the universe. But they're working overtime to set up their government for their false God. And only when you understand this will you ever understand why international communism cannot, will not change its course of action. It is not dead today. It's alive more so than ever before. And it will never stop till it has conquered the world and the Bible says so. Illuminist propaganda want every one of us to believe that all people who are atheists, all communists are atheists. All those who oppose Christianity are atheists. They're not. They worship Lucifer. This is a religious struggle that the human race is going through today. It is God the Father and Jesus Christ versus Lucifer. But we know that God is in charge. That's the good news. Only what God allows Lucifer and his cohorts to do will they be able to accomplish. Nothing else. There was a very remarkable letter dated August 15th, 1871. Until recently, it was actually on display in the British Museum Library in London, England. Albert Pike gave Giuseppe Mazzini details of their final conquest for world government. He stated and claimed that this was given to him by Lucifer. The Bible seems to indicate that could be true, because it said Satan, the great red dragon in Revelation 13, 1 through 4, is the one who is giving power to the rise of this end-time beast system. In very graphic detail, Albert Pike outlined 3 world wars and many revolutionary wars for the 20th century. He said there had to be many brush fire wars, revolutions that would overthrow what we term in today's modern terminology third and fourth world countries that were not ready for civilization. But he said there had to be 2 world wars and the possibility of a third to bring about world government. Remember, this was written August 15th, 1871. Has anybody heard of World War I? What about World War II? That means if they're accurate, and it will take possibly a third one before the human race will give in to world government, we have World War III yet to contend with. The only difference is we have nuclear missiles that can annihilate whole citizens, whole cities with populations of up to 7 million people within a matter of minutes. It won't be a prolonged war. It won't be necessary. All they have to do is launch their missiles from the east and west coast, from the submarines, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, New Orleans, Beaumont, Texas, Houston, all those along the seacoast, gone, never to be seen again in this lifetime, and other cities around the world. Here's what he said, and I'll quote the last part of his letter. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist. Remember, they were to put them together under a new term called communism. We shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all of its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. He says that we will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitudes, that's the people on planet Earth, disillusioned with Christianity. Do you see what's happening? Satan is going to set up the world to where he's going to have a third world war that will be so awful, and according to the Bible, Revelation chapter 9, it's going to destroy 1/3 of mankind. 1 out of every 3 people on planet Earth will be dead because God Almighty said so in the pages of the Bible, and these instruments of Satan are going to bring it about. And those who claim to be Christians today but will not obey the living Jesus Christ are going to throw their hands up and say, I told you Christianity is for the birds. It's no better than any other religion. Where is this God of love that's going to intervene? Why would any God who says He is love, why would He let this happen? That's exactly what Lucifer wants. Because it's then and after this great Holocaust that has never been experienced in human history yet, then He will send His saviors on the scene. And mankind will sweep up His sweet talk, and they will become a part of the end time system that will take the mark of the beast to prove their allegiance to their God. What's wrong with this mark of the beast that's going to be administered at the end of the age? It's only an economic system that gives you the right to buy and sell. What's wrong with it is you have to swear allegiance to this person that claims to be God. That means idolatry. You're not worshiping the true God, so you're in rebellion to Him. That's what's wrong with it. I'll continue the conclusion of this letter. He said, these people, disillusioned with Christianity, who will want to worship someone but will not know who, will finally accept the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought out into the open for the first time upon the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both exterminated at the same time. End of quote. Has there been 2 world wars in this century? Yes, there has. We're waiting for yet a third. And this will conclude exactly what Albert Pike wrote August 15th, 1871. Notice what another man who was a part of the communist conspiracy of the Illuminati stated. Quote, first, we will take Eastern Europe. After World War II, Stalin, Roosevelt, Churchill met in the treaty that ended that war. And with a stroke of a pen, 100 million people in several nations in Europe went behind the Iron Curtain to become slaves to international communism. Isn't that exactly what V.I. Lenin stated in 1917? And yet it didn't happen until 1945. But it happened, didn't it? Then he said, we will then take the masses of Asia. Is all of Asia now communist? China fell in 1949 and 50 when our own State Department cut off all funding and all ammunition and supplies to our friend Chiang Kai-shek. And yet, with all the military apparatus that we gave through the Lend-Lease programs to Russia to fight the Germans in World War II were turned over to the Chinese, and they went right into China, chased Chiang Kai-shek onto the little island of Formosa. So they took the masses of Asia. The United States went into a war under the auspices of the United Nations organization in Korea. Came out a loser. Anytime you draw, you're a loser. Then they went into Vietnam. They came out with pride, said Tricky Dicky Nelson, or Nixon. He said, we'll just withdraw. That way we're not losers. Oh, yes, you are. When you don't win, you're a loser. They put us into those wars to break the power and to break the will of the American people to fight for freedom. And they knew if they could break the will of the American people, then we would crumble and go into world government. And the United States of America will go into world government. They will be enslaved. Our peoples, many of them are going to be transported overseas into foreign countries, into slave labor camps for their new masters. He said, then we will encircle the United States, which will be the last bastion of capitalism. Has Cuba fell in 1957? Has Nicaragua fallen? In Mexico, are there communist insurgents fighting in the southern part of Mexico? What about many of the South American countries? Have they already fallen or in the process of falling to international communism? Yes, they have. Will the Philippines fall? Oh, yes, they will, because of our naval bases that have been dismantled there. There was another man, Dmitry Manilovsky. He headed up the Lenin School of Political Warfare in Moscow. In the 1930s, he made this quote: "War to the hilt between communism and capitalism is inevitable." That's the United States of America. Today, of course, we're not strong enough to attack. Our time will come in 30 to 40 years. To win, we shall need the element of surprise. In other words, communism is dead. The Cold War is over. You can dismantle now all of your military apparatus. Russia is no longer seeking world domination. The Western world, and who is the Western world? The United States. Europe has no armaments. After World War II, we saw to it with a treaty. Germany can never have military armaments again for offensive purposes. The Western world will have to be put to sleep. We shall begin by launching the most spectacular peace movement on record. There shall be electrifying overtures. Oh yes. We'll say, we'll show you that we don't want to dominate the world anymore. East Germany, you're free. We'll tear down the Berlin Wall. You can re-emerge as one nation with Western Germany again. See how loyal we are to our word? Communism is dead. We don't want to take the world anymore. There shall be electrifying overtures and unheard of concessions. Yes, we're going to have free elections. And yet 82% of those that ran were hardened communists. There shall be electrifying overtures and unheard of concessions. The capitalist countries, stupid and decadent. That's what they think about every American. They think we're stupid because we keep falling for their tricks. Over and over they say, we're not going to bury you. When they started out saying, we will bury you. And we say, goody, they're not going to bury us. And then they start their campaign again. And then when they get into trouble economically, then they say, oh, let's have peace. Just give us all the military aid, all the economic aid, all the food supplies that we need, and we'll be your friend again. 6 times they've done it. In the 1920s, they did it in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and Mikhail Gorbachev started it. And it was revealed in 1970 by the highest defector of the KGB that has ever come out from behind the Iron Curtain. He laid down the game plan for what's happened since 1985 to the present moment in detail. Even how there would be a seemingly struggle for leadership, and it was to free up Mikhail Gorbachev to oversee the demilitarization of our military bases in America. Our FBI knew it and had all this information in advance. And yet, they're playing out their program to lull you and me to sleep. They will rejoice to cooperate to their own destruction. They will leap at another chance to be friends. As soon as their guard, and when you read the book of Ezekiel, guard means military equipment, is down. And what happened under George Bush? He began to dismantle the military. Bill Clinton has brought it down by 1/3. He's closed the #1 military base that defends the western part of the United States in San Francisco, the Presidio. And then who is it that has set up residence there? The #1 KGB agent in the world, Mikhail Gorbachev, that helped to overthrow Pakistan and murder up to 3 million of those people. And yet, when he came to America, if he'd have run against George Bush, he'd have won the presidency. He says, as soon as their guard is down, we shall smash them with our clenched fist. Do you wonder why Nelson Mandela stood in South Africa, him and Joe Slovo, head of the Communist Party? And when they were standing up and it appeared in newspapers all across America on television, he raised a clenched fist. because he knew that his day had come. He had been there in the prisons for years and years because documents were found with his signature stating that they were overthrowing South Africa for communism and that they wanted to take the diamond mines. They wanted to take all the various minerals in the ground that would harden the submarines of the United States, and they would harden the materials that they build the space shuttles for. So the United States of America would not be able to build military apparatus anymore. And he stood on that stage with a clenched fist. Who is now president of South Africa? A man by the name of Dennis, trying to remember his last, Fisher, fled South Africa within the last couple of months because of all the information he had been gathering and talking about Mandela, Joe Slovo, and all the other communists that have taken over that country. He had to flee for their lives and is in touch with me, and he's going to give me boxes of information to show that they are now setting up the most vicious regime outside of communist Russia itself to slaughter the individuals who will not go into the New Age movement. They're also building in Johannesburg, South Africa, a new building that's going to be one of the regional governments when the world is divided up into 10 global regions. And they're also building under contract in Johannesburg, South Africa, the building stones to build the temple in Jerusalem for the Masonic order. And their man will sit in that temple and claim to be God. There's another book I want to mention this evening, and it talks about a League of Nations. A man wrote a book called The Fourth Reich of the Rich. This particular man lived in England, and it became so socialized that he fled to Canada. It became so socialized that he fled to California. His pen name was Des Griffin because he couldn't use his real name. He wrote this book, and it talked about the League of Nations that would be established after World War I. World War I was actually brought into being by international bankers who were the high echelon of the Illuminati. They said they had to create a world war so that all the nations would see the horror of it and would be willing to join in to a one world government. A man by the name of Woodrow Wilson, very quiet, obscure man, who was president of one of the East Coast universities, finally was elected president of the United States of America. A man by the name of Colonel Edward Mandell House was his alter ego. He stood by him everywhere he went. Colonel Edward Mandell House just so happened to be a communist. He wrote a book called Philip Drew Philip Drew Administrator. In this book, there was a story of how America was to be socialized. It was to be communism as dreamed of by Karl Marx. In that book, the United States would come under subjection to the League of Nations. After World War II, they actually tried to formulate a world government by starting the League of Nations. In this book, Fourth Reich of the Rich, there are pictures showing them. It shows the front cover of the book, Philip Drew Administrator, showing that America was to be ruled over by non-elective administrators. What have we seen happening in the United States of America today? Have we seen non-elected people writing the laws and then delivering them into the hands of the people that we elect to go into the Senate and the House of Representatives? That means non-elected administrators. are now running this country just like he said would happen in that book. The Senate of the United States of America failed to ratify the League of Nations. Therefore, it did not develop. This man, Colonel Edward Mandell House, started immediately working toward another organization, and he changed its name. He said that it would be called the United Nations. There is a man who ran 6 times, and I will come back to that in just a moment. There is a man by the name of Norman Thomas who ran for the presidency 6 times of the United States on the socialist ticket. Notice what he said, quote, "The American people will never knowingly adopt socialism, but under the name liberalism, they will adopt every fragment of the socialist program until America will one day be a socialist nation without knowing how it happened." End of quote. That was a socialist that made that statement. In 1959, a man by the name of Nikita Khrushchev came to the United States of America. This man made a speech before the Politburo 3 months before he came to this country. Here's what he said, I quote, "We can't expect the American people to jump from capitalism to communism, but we can assist their elected leaders in giving them small doses of socialism until they have awakened one day to find they have communism." End of quote. Here is a socialist and a communist making the same prediction. And they said they would send people into the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America, or they would send people behind the scenes and they would write legislation and it would be passed into law so that we would become a socialist, communist country and not even know how it happened to us. Did you know all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are intact in the United States of America today? All they need to do is call for a martial law and then set up a dictatorship. We would be exactly like Russia. All 10. Why do you think we have the Federal Reserve System? It's a central bank. What are one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto? A central bank. What is public education? One of the planks of the Communist Manifesto, so that they can use a public educational system run by the government to program the people. On April 24th, 1920, there was a joint committee investigating seditious activities, and it was filed in the Senate of the state of New York. It was called the Lusk Report. I'm simply going to summarize what that report said. It said there was no difference in socialism and communism. They were both trying to eliminate our capitalistic system and interject a collective system, collective ownership of everything by the government and the state, so that no one would have free enterprise anymore. See, centralization of power in Washington, D.C. is the prime communist socialist objective. If the communists and the socialists can actually destroy states' rights, then they only have one government to take, Washington, D.C. Instead of 50 separate governments, then the capital of the United States. So what they did was they made an attack on the 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I want to examine the 10th Amendment just for a moment. It states, and I quote, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. End of quote. Nowhere in the Constitution, excuse me, of the United States does it give the federal government any power or control over public education. That's to be left to the states or the people themselves. The federal government is not supposed to have their hand in health, in spite of Hillary Rodham Clinton and wanting to impose the mark of the beast upon us. They're not to have anything to do with a welfare system, labor, dams, public power projects, agriculture in America, anything to do with unemployment or the housing in the United States. According to the Constitution, the regulation of all of these areas are to be left to the states or to the individuals. But remember, the prediction of both the socialist and the communist. They said that they would pass legislation to socialize America so that it would become a socialist country and we wouldn't even know how it happened. You can now know, no matter which president goes in to the United States, a Democrat or a Republican, why we continue right on the road to socialism. Because one of the points they said, and I'll discuss in a moment, is that they would capture one or both political parties of the United States. Ronald Reagan was at that time, or claimed to be, and I want that understood, claimed to be, because he was not by everything his signature went upon. He claimed to be the most conservative president to ever take office in over 60 years. He was elected with 76% consensus of the voting public, more than any other president. Yet, he did nothing toward his platform in passing it into law. That's because the majority of the socialist communists, using the term liberal, was passing the true goals and purposes of the Illuminati. One reason why the Illuminati has been able to take over and allow the federal government in Washington, D.C. to take over everything in America is because of a decision handed down by the Supreme Court of the United States. That particular decision was the Wicker versus Filburn 1942 decision. The last sentence of that decision is what's used to give authority to the federal government of the United States to get their hands into everything and start running it. Here it is, quote, "It is hardly a lack of due process for government to regulate that which it subsidizes," end of quote. So the federal government comes into little towns like Waxahachie, Texas, Waco, Texas, and they'll say, "You need new police cars. We will furnish you the money." They now regulate the police department because of the Supreme Court decision. They come in and say, "Look, we will furnish monies 90% and we'll build federal highways, interstates, so that you will now be able to travel more freely." So when they give them the money, they regulate them. Why do you think the federal government makes the highway speed limits? Why do you think any state that wouldn't lower it from 70 to 55 were threatened with cutoff of aid from Washington, D.C.? They regulate everything that they give money toward. That's why your church, your college, your university, if they take money from the federal government, will now be controlled by the federal government. This is how they do it, to gain control. That's what socialism is. Control over everything. Each new federal law passed by Congress invades states' rights, and it actually strengthens control of Washington, D.C. over the lives of all citizens. An example of individual states is that the Kennedy administration proposed the establishment of a new Department of Urban Affairs. His director would then become an additional member of the President's cabinet. So if he became the head of urban affairs, then he would control all housing. That's the way it works. So they subsidize it, then they control it. In a speech by J. Edgar Hoover in 1957, notice what he said. He was the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Quote, "To dismiss lightly the existence of a subversive threat in the United States is to deliberately commit national suicide. In some quarters, we're doing exactly that." End of quote. The July 30th, 1953 Jenner Report, or Jenner Committee as it was called, ran a congressional investigation. It was called the Internal Security Subcommittee, and they were investigating communist infiltration into our government. Here was their conclusion in 1953. Number one, the Soviet International Organization has carried on a successful and important penetration of the United States government, and this penetration has not been fully exposed. Remember McCarthy? He found there to be 81 communists in the State Department of the United States. Then another man who was head of security after they blackballed McCarthy and chased him out of the Senate found that there were 938 individual communists in that one department of the United States government. We weren't told that, were we? We were just informed McCarthy was a bad guy. No, he was the good guy wearing the white hat. It was just the television. The colors were reversed and it looked black. That's all. The second point they made in the Jenner Committee, this penetration of the communists has extended from the lower ranks to top policy or top level policy and operating positions in our government. Number three, the agents of this penetration have operated in accordance with a distinct, designed fashion by their superiors. Number four, members of this conspiracy, their word, not mine, I'm just quoting, helped to get each other in government, helped each other to rise in government, and protected each other from exposure. Number five in this report, in general, the communists who infiltrated our government worked behind the scenes, guiding research. That's why anytime the government of the United States comes out with some kind of program and says, our research has found, you know it's communist, they're going to say whatever they want to make you believe it. So that socialism will look good and capitalism and the free enterprise system will look bad. And prepare memoranda on which basic American policies were set. Writing speeches for cabinet officers, influencing congressional investigations, drafting laws. What did Khrushchev say? We'll give them little doses through laws that liberals will introduce. Then it says they manipulate administrative reorganization, always serving the interest of their superiors. And the sixth and last statement was, policies and programs laid down by members of this conspiracy are still in effect with our government and constitute a continuing hazard to our national security. End of quote. That's not all. I want to show you what W. Cleon Skousen put into the congressional record of the United States of America. This man was the assistant to J. Edgar Hoover. Here's what he said. He found 45 points from the socialist communist writings themselves. who are Illuminati agents for the internal destruction of the United States of America. I'm only going to mention a few of these in passing, the ones that will be most popular in your minds, and you'll recognize them immediately. One, they said they would permit free trade between all nations, regardless of whether the items could be used for war. Have we even seen President Bush sign a free trade agreement with Canada? Have we seen also NAFTA passed so that Mexico and the United States now have free trade agreements? And all of these companies that are fleeing the United States to go down into Mexico because of the now free trade, and they can hire people for 75 cents to $1.25 an hour instead of $14 an hour. They said that they wanted the United States government to provide foreign aid to all nations, even to communist states. And the Foreign Aid Act of 1946 was passed, and at this moment as I'm speaking, the United States gives foreign aid to every country, even the butchers of Tiananmen Square in China. They said they wanted to grant recognition to Red China and admission to them in the United Nations organization. What happened? Did Richard Nixon go there and roll out a red carpet and invite them to come into the United Nations organization? And when the communist delegate came in and sat down, he threw such a stir that they ejected the nationalist Chiang Kai-shek delegate. And nationalist China no longer is represented in the United Nations. They said they wanted to set up East and West Germany. Did they do it? And their propaganda was they would let them merge together again when they were pretending to become weak and no longer be a threat to the world. Has it happened? Did you see it? And I see it in our lifetimes. Yes, we did. They said they wanted to allow all Soviet countries, communist countries, representation within the United Nations. Did they? Yes. What is little known is the Soviet Union gets 3 votes to the United States 1. Is that fair? I wouldn't think so, but that's the way it's set up. Another point, the communists said they wanted to promote the United Nations as the only hope for mankind. And we're going to discuss that in the last little while that we have in a couple of moments. They wanted to continue to give Russia access to the United States Patent Office so that they could come in and take patents to Russia and build everything Americans spent their hard-earned money to discover. They wouldn't have to discover. They wouldn't have any research costs. They would just go build it. It's happened. They said they wanted to capture one or both of the political parties of the United States. I gave a sermon on video number 717 giving the background of the last 3 presidents of the United States, both Republicans and present Democrats, showing that they have captured both political parties. And no matter what they say to get elected, they sign laws into being that will further socialize us and put us into the United Nations orbit and take away our freedom as a nation. They stated, and this was put into the Congressional Record of the United States and in the book by W. Cleon Skousen, The Naked Communist. They said that they wanted to use technical decisions in the courts of the United States to weaken basic American institutions. So they founded an organization called the American Civil Liberties Union. And they attack every single American institution there is, especially the laws, to make it a lawless society. They stated they wanted to get control of the schools, the NEA, National Education Association, all teachers' organizations, so they could eventually indoctrinate our children with current communist propaganda. And they're doing it. They said they would infiltrate and take over the press in America. They wanted to gain key positions in radio, television, the motion picture industry. Have they succeeded? Yes, they have. You listen to shortwave sometime, and the news that comes from Europe is diametrically the opposite of what we see on ABC, NBC, and CBS because of our controlled media. They said they wanted to continue to discredit American culture so that the United States of America would crumble from within because they wanted to now present as art nudity. They wanted to come out with all expressions of nudity in movies, books, perversion in art. They wanted to gain control of art critics so that they would go along with the disgusted art that is put out in the United States today. They wanted to eliminate all laws governing obscenity, calling it censure. Have you ever heard that word lately? This is the program to break down the morals of the United States of America, which is a Christian nation at one time. Now, only about 23% claim to go to church. Well, you're pretty bad off. I don't think that's a Christian nation unless they're not getting anything there. And they shouldn't go. They should find somebody that'll tell them the truth for a change. They said that they wanted to break down cultural standards by promoting pornography in books, magazines. We now have 110 porno magazines targeted for adult men. They wanted to have porno flicks in movies. They wanted to begin to use certain verbiage on radio, which was outlawed in the past, and television. Don't we hear it more and more? Profanity. They said that they wanted to present to the American people homosexuality as normal. And they wanted to present the American people as becoming a decadent people. Are we? Yes. What was unheard of in the 50s when I was growing up is commonplace today. You wouldn't even whisper it in secret, but it's commonplace today. They said they wanted to infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion from the Bible with social religion. Have they done it? Yes, they have. You can't go into a church out on the corners and find the real truth of the Bible being taught. You won't find the ministers, few and far between, that'll say the things I'm saying tonight. They won't have their 100 or 800 people sitting in the audience. They'll be like me, lucky to have 40. Because the truth nobody likes. Nobody wants it unless God intervenes in your life. They said that they wanted to support all socialistic movements. They wanted to give centralization of all control in the hands of the federal government. And they did it by a Supreme Court law, and the justice that swung the law was a member of high Freemasonry. He followed orders, and they passed into law the Wickard versus Filburn, and everything the government now supports economically, they control it. They said that they wanted to eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. They did it in 1962. No more reports on the infiltration of our government. They said that they wanted to infiltrate and gain control of big business and start creating monopolies in the marketplace, because monopolies is where the action is. When they control everything, you and I control nothing. That's socialism. Does every town in America look alike today? Does every town have a McDonald's on the corner, a Wendy's, then they have an Arby's? Everything is the same. Isn't the same group of people now control all the multinational corporations? The international banking conglomerates are controlled by the same individuals. Illuminati agents. I'll only mention a couple more. Then I want to get down to some serious thoughts. They said that they wanted to dominate the psychiatric profession and pass mental health laws so they could use these to coerce people in the Senate and House of Representatives. Send them to the psychiatrists like Senator Thomas Eagleton from Missouri years ago. And then if he don't go along with the goals, they expose it to the media. And he's run out of the Senate. And they put in a liberal in his place. They said they wanted to discredit the family as a legitimate institution. Do we see them trying to allow homosexuals to marry today? Or adopt children? Isn't there an assault on the family in America? Just look at some of the sitcoms, especially the one Married with Children, the most disgusting show that has ever been put on television. With all this in mind, notice the following. They said they wanted to corrupt the young. What I'm about to give you now was taken from the state attorney's office from the state of Florida. George A. Brodagam put it out way back years ago. This information was found in Dusseldorf, Germany in May of 1919 by the Allied forces that occupied that area of the country. They said the communist rules for revolution, and that means Illuminati rules. They wanted to corrupt the young. Look around today at the young people. They don't dress up. They're not neat anymore. They dress down. They're in rebellion to parental authority. One of the 10 Commandments in the Bible says, honor your father and your mother that your days may be long on the earth. This is the first commandment with promise. But our young people today are in rebellion against their parents. And so we see a nation in turmoil and a young people, the number one death inflicted upon all teenagers is suicide. Direct relationship to cause and effect. In Deuteronomy chapter 32 of your Bible, in Leviticus 26, it says, if you will obey the law and statutes of the Lord your God, all these blessings will come upon you. But if you break them, and one of them is honoring your parents, all these curses will come upon you. Look around, America. Are we under a curse? Oh, yes, we are. Because we've left the Lord our God and Jesus Christ, our Savior. They said that they wanted to get young people interested in sex and perversion, make them superficial so they would lose their ruggedness. They wouldn't be men anymore, but they would be little twerps, and they would be fairies and this type thing, so that America would be targeted for overthrow and it would be a pushover. They said that they wanted to get control of all means of publicity. And they would use television, radio, the newspapers, so that they would get people's mind off their government by focusing their attention on athletics, basketball, football. And there's nothing wrong with these things in and of themselves. But they're using them all the way from the time a kid is going into kindergarten. They've got the Pee-wee leagues, and they've got the ex-Pee-wee leagues, and the next step up, all the way into college and universities and then professional, so that you're bombarded with athletics and they're supported by multimillionaires who are a part of the Illuminati. Get their minds on the athletics and off the government so that you and I won't even know they're taking over our government and going to enslave us. They said they wanted to get their minds on sexy books, trash, change the attitude of their minds. They said they wanted to get our minds on plays. So we have the movie theaters. We have Broadway live. We have every type of entertainment there is. And other trivialities. They said they wanted to divide the people into hostile groups So they sent Dr. Martin Luther King, affiliated with 60 Communist Front organizations, and started stirring up hatred between blacks and whites in America. And they've used other people since then, such as Jesse Jackson. He is to the core on the side of those working for world government. He said they would harp upon things that were controversial and that would divide the people. And that's exactly what happened. Who is it that is the accuser of the brethren? Satan, the devil. No wonder he comes up with these tactics of pitting one race against another, then men against women to break the family unit up, then parents against children. He always divides till he conquers. They said they wanted to destroy people's faith in their national leaders. And I believe they've done the most wonderful job since America has been formulated with the current President of the United States. Somebody who pushes as a lifestyle homosexuality. Someone who has a woman in every port and a quarter to call her when he gets there. And his own security people carry quarters when they jog to make the phone calls from phone booths. And they've testified under oath that they've done it. They said they wanted to use the mass media to always preach true democracy, but when they seize power, then they would ruthlessly change it to socialism. They said that they wanted to encourage government extravagance. They would send money to fund any and everything so that they would cause the credit of the United States of America to become null and void, and nobody would even accept the dollar bill anymore. Since we don't have a gold backing, our currency is nothing but paper. It's worthless, except to start a bonfire with. And when people find out how worthless it really is, and that printing more and more and more money is the only purpose for paper money, and that's the only thing that causes inflation. You and I don't cause inflation. Printing paper money does. The more paper there is out there chasing the same amount of goods, the higher the price. So they want to destroy our economy through inflation. They said that they wanted to foment unnecessary strikes in vital industry. They wanted to encourage civil disorders, and they did in the 60s. They said they wanted to, by various arguments, cause the breakdown of the old moral virtues in America, such as honesty. Your word is your bond. They wanted to see to it that our word was no longer good. They said that they wanted to cause the registration of all firearms under some pretext, because they know that until they disarm the people, they cannot overthrow a strong nation. Remember that. They want your guns and my guns, which I don't have. But they want anybody on earth that has a gun in this country, they want your guns. How are they going to get it? I want to ask a question right now before I continue. Is the United States of America about to go under occupation to the United Nations organization? Yes, I'm serious. I think it's a legitimate question. Why would I ask such a question? Here's why. The United Nations organization was the dream of a communist. And on July of 1945, when they gathered in San Francisco, later it was found out that every American delegate that went to the San Francisco conference, except for one, was a communist. Secret communist agent. Even the document was written by people like Alger Hiss, who oversaw the entire operation. The only man that was not a communist was Dean Acheson. And of all things, he was the personal lawyer that represented Joseph Stalin, head of world communism in the United States courts. 100% of those delegates were favoring international communism. All those men but 3 were also members of another organization called the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a semi-secret organization with about 2,900 members in the United States of America. And they're all working for world government. Every one of them. I could list, but I want all those individuals who went to the San Francisco conference. Every one of them were communists. Did you know one of the most important things that happened was that always a Soviet national, which means a communist, would have the key position of Undersecretary General for Political and Security Council Affairs. Why is that important? Because that person heads the military of the United Nations. And by agreement of those that founded the organization, the delegation from the United States made a Russian in charge of it. Now do we understand why when we went to Korea and Vietnam and we had to give our military plan 24 hours in advance to the head of the United Nations Security Council Affairs? He was a communist. He relayed it straight to the communists in Korea and in Vietnam. They would move their military. We would bomb rice paddies. Then they would ambush us. The United Nations is an organization to bring about a world government for communism, and it will never change. And something that's happened very recently by Mr. Bill Clinton. He passed into law PDD 25, which turns the military of the United States of America over to the United Nations organization. This is getting very interesting. So the question that I ask, is the United States about to be occupied by the United Nations, becomes more serious. For the past year, I've received reports, including photographs, which I will show each one of you tonight on our monitors. United Nations military vehicles, foreign troops in different parts of the United States of America. This should not be any surprise to any of us who have done our homework in the rise of the end-time beast system of Revelation 13. Under chapters 9 and 10 of the United Nations Charter, the United Nations is given authority to enforce internal domestic policy dealing with equal employment opportunity, human rights, economic development, cultural matters, matters relating to health. In the United States, they could do it right now. It's under the same section of the Charter that certain specialized agencies have been set up. Their policies are to deal with many of these domestic matters. And they're found in Articles 102 to 105 of Chapter 16. This gives the United Nations the right, and I'm quoting, to physically come onto or occupy the land territory of a member state for fulfillment of its purposes. End of quote. Do you think this could ever happen in the United States of America? I want to hold up a newspaper. Quite interesting. This is the USA Today, Friday, March 31st. From this taping, it's 1 day old. The heading is, Haiti put in United Nations hands today. There it is. Can any of us deny a nation on the face of the earth has been turned over and occupied the entirety of the land area to the United Nations organization? Anything that they want to do to carry out their purpose, which is world government, they can do it. The newspaper says so. The authority to transfer the United States military establishment to the United Nations organization was solidified by our Congress in 1961. It is Public Law number 87-297. Any person in America can go to your public library. I don't care if it's a librarian sitting there and has to get loan books from another country. They can get this law and see it with their own eyes. It's the Arms Control and Disarmament Act, House of Representatives 9118, Bill, 87th Congress, September 26, 1961. Public Law number 87-297 is referred to as State Document Publication number 7277. The State Department of the United States actually printed this. I have a copy back in some of our boxes. I couldn't find it for tonight's program, where it actually says there is 3 stages in which all nations on earth must turn over their military apparatus to the United Nations and no longer have a military force of their own except to put down internal rebellion against the new world government. When you turn in volume 9 of United States Codes, page 558, I'll quote, under policy information. This was written in 1963. It says clearly that the Congress knows that the plan includes the policing of the United States by foreign troops. That is why when I show you United Nations photographs on railroad cars in America, when I show you live film footage that I took with our own cameras of East German military vehicles imported into the United States, and when I questioned those that were storing them under U.S. Customs Authority, they said they had an agreement with the United Nations. They were refurbishing and rebuilding them for United Nations purposes. Are we about to be occupied? I remember a movie in 1987 called America, spelled with a K. And it started out with the year 1996, and the United States of America was occupied by Russian United Nations forces. Were they trying to set our minds and get us used to the idea way back then? You can go to public libraries, if they're large enough, and check out the ABC miniseries for yourself. People have done it. Bill Clinton and Congress, if they promote and get their constitutional convention, which they're hoping for, you and I are going to be living under 2 different constitutions. One of those constitutions in Article 8, Section 12 says this, quote, "No person shall bear arms." No person. Didn't the state of Texas just pass a law recently saying that every person on the streets of Texas could carry a concealed weapon? If Texas is a part of the United Nations organization and it comes under their laws, it says no person shall bear arms or possess lethal weapons except the police and members of the armed forces. End of quote. Now do you understand why the Brady Bill, which Mr. Brady was shot and nearly fatally wounded, but he also was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations working for world government. And now he's going around the country sponsoring bills to confiscate your guns. Now do you understand why every murder, every senseless shooting, every drive-by shooting in the drug-addicted neighborhoods of America, it's exposed on national television. And every time there's a murder of some kind with a handgun, you and I are the victims of their propaganda. They've got to take every armament from America. I want to pause at this moment. I know I'm running out of time and I'm going to have to work quickly now. I want to give just a moment of information. I don't know how many here know about the history of the state of Texas. The state of Texas came into the Union of the United States of America under treaty. Every year, this treaty has to be renewed. Anytime the state of Texas wanted to step out of the United States of America, they would simply not renew the treaty. What's going to happen when every person in the state of Texas is told that their guns must be confiscated? What if the following were to happen in the state of Texas? What if in 29 Palms Marine Base in California, they have already sent around a 46-point questionnaire trying to find out what the United States military would do if they were put into the United Nations World Military Force? What if they were to ask certain questions, such as, I would swear to the following code, quote, I am a United Nations fighting person. I serve in the forces which maintain world peace and every nation's way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. They were supposed to answer whether they would agree to that or not agree to do that. Notice the next question. And question 31 forward was programming these people's mind in the military to join the United Nations and turn on their own people. Listen carefully to the 46th and final question on this survey. The United States government declares a ban on the possession, sale, transportation, and transfer of non-sporting firearms. Remember Waco? They were burned to the ground and 86 people died in the state of Texas. Now I'll continue the quote. A 30-day amnesty period is permitted for those firearms to be turned over to local authorities. At the end of this period, a number of citizens groups refuse to turn over their firearms. Consider the following statement and answer it. I, that's a United States military person acting under the United Nations organization, I would fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the United States government. End of quote. Is our military being prepared right now to become a part of world government? Oh, yes, it is. Do you believe that? And you say, well, yes, this law was 1961. I want to read you a law, an act of Congress in 1989 called the Arms Control and Disarmament Amendments Act of 1989. Quote, I'll quote section 2. As defined in this act, the terms arms control and disarmament means the identification, verification, inspection, limitation, control, reduction, or elimination of armed forces and armaments of all kinds under international agreement. End of quote. Every firearm in America outside that of the military forces that will fight on the side of the United Nations will be banned as late as 1989. You can go to the library, look it up for yourself. The latest law in 1989 is Public Law 101-216. You can verify it in your own library. Are we about to be occupied? Are there United Nations forces training in the United States of America right now as I'm speaking? According to the Washington, D.C. Times of January 18th, 1993, the United States government has allowed United Nations troops to be inside the United States, and for the first time ever to allow our military to come under United Nations commands. Serious business. I want to stop right now and cut away. Explain what you're seeing on the screen right now is a United States Customs depot 6 to 8 miles north of Interstate 10, north of Biloxi, Mississippi, on Highway 49. I went there personally while my wife stood guard for me to make sure nobody stopped me. Took pictures of East German communist vehicles that have been imported into the United States of America. The gentleman that came outside when he saw me taking pictures asked me what I wanted them for. I asked him if I could buy some of these vehicles. He said they have been brought into this country under contract with the United Nations organization. Airmar Resources is the name of the company. I took the footage myself. Acre after acre of East German military equipment being brought in. Refrigeration units are being put into many of these units. I just heard on the news a week ago that in some communist countries they're going in by night, taking people away who are anti-communist, anti-New World Order, killing them, taking them back, dumping them on their steps until everybody gets up in the morning and sees their bodies. Then a refrigerated dump truck or garbage truck comes along and picks their bodies up. This man told me they were refurbishing these, putting refrigeration units in them and making them into trash trucks for United Nations purposes. All right, this picture you're seeing is a Russian Gecko SA-8 surface-to-air missile system, complete with 6 live missiles in its tubes. This was spotted along United States Route 64 in eastern Kentucky. Remember, Kentucky is United States of America. This picture, this is a Russian Frog missile launcher with a missile in place on top of it. And it was photographed along Interstate Highway in Louisiana, the next state over from Texas. The missile is capable of delivering a chemical, biological, nuclear, or a conventional explosive in its warhead. Remember, this was seen in Louisiana. This particular picture is the second sighting of a Russian T-72 main battle tank that's been seen in the United States of America on Interstate Route 1 in northern Florida. To be exact, a man called us in the middle of the night. He said they blocked off all highways leading up to the interstate going through Orlando. This was Interstate 4. And a large convoy of foreign military vehicles went down the highway during the night. This particular picture was taken in Montana. Notice it actually has on this flat car, it says UN on that white vehicle. United Nations, right on it. So there can be no question whatsoever about this one. This was at a railroad crossing. The people stopped. Here the train came. They had a camera. What luck. This particular picture is an Army AJ-64 Apache helicopter. They're beginning to paint every single one of these black. They have three types. One of them is a small one that two people actually ride in. Then they have a larger one where they carry missiles and heat-seeking missiles, so that anybody's body temperature that's 98.6 degrees, they can seek you out when they shoot the missiles. Then they have the large black ones that are their cargo carriers, in which they carry various cargo. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. There is a couple in this room right now who was headed over to Fort Worth, Texas, recently, several months ago. They're sitting at the back table right back there. I'll not call their name. As they were going there, they looked over, and to their surprise, they saw a train load of flat cars with United Nations vehicles sitting on it. They said they had heard me give sermons and talk about Bible prophecy and the coming world government and how we would be occupied and scattered through the nations into the various slave labor camps. But until they actually saw this and stopped and got out and looked and saw it with their own eyes, it was just so many words. But all of a sudden, pain started shooting through their stomach, and it made them want to double over the realization that this is real. These things are happening to our beloved United States of America because the people have turned their back upon their God, and He's given the curses. And it's going to happen unless this nation returns unto our God. There was another man, Tuesday, March 28, 1995, call from Fort Worth, Texas. He said he lived close to a street called Rosedale. He was driving home, and suddenly he saw a large convoy of flatbed cars on a railroad track, and he saw tanks that were not recognizable by him. He thought they were Russian military tanks. So he rushed home and he began to talk to a friend of his, and that friend happened to be stationed after World War II in Germany. He saw many Russian vehicles. He knew what their tanks looked like. He had kept up with all the modern military equipment being produced by the United States, by Russia, and all the other countries. He went back after questioning his friend, and sure enough, he said, "These are Russian tanks." And he called our office and told us about it. These things are real. My wife and I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because we kept seeing reports of these black helicopters with no markings, no identification. We didn't know what they were. We wanted to find out the truth because we saw the same black helicopters with people with black outfits, black ski masks, black gas masks on the news when they burned to the ground the Waco compound of the Branch Davidians. We wanted to know the truth. What was being rumored did not satisfy us. So we went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We got a visitor's permit. So happened they were having maneuvers that day, so everywhere you would try to drive that was going to take you to where the helicopters were, the roads were blocked off to civilians. We saw 3 of the black helicopters take over a very dense patch of trees, out of view of anybody, and one road leading back to it. But we literally saw the black helicopters. But we still didn't have an answer. What are they? What are they for? Why are they being seen all over the United States? Why are they hovering down over homes? Why did one community of 300 people in the state of Kentucky have a whole lot of black helicopters come over their home and a man went out in the yard and shot at one of them because it hovered so close to his house. The next day, a whole brigade of them came along, and they began to pump something into the air, and every person in town was sick the next day. And it was called and reported to us. So we went there to find the truth. We went into a museum that they kept up with our tax money. As we went around, here was a black helicopter hanging from the roof, the ceiling inside the museum. Then as we walked around, we had to look back. And here was a walkway. We could go up on a stage. We went up on the stage, and it was all about black helicopters, black mask, black gas masks, black suits, black shoes, black pants. We found out at this 101st Airborne Attack Division that there was a task force number 160 there that were now training in their Night Stalker black helicopters with no numbers. It didn't tell what country they belonged to. It told us in a 45-minute movie what they were for. They were being trained to go anywhere on planet Earth to put down rebellion in any city on earth. If the United States is not to become involved in another country, their internal affairs, according to the Constitution of the United States, why are we training these people? Because our military will be turned over in stage 3 completely to the United Nations organization. So I want to ask a question. With all these military sightings, with the footage which I went and gathered live so that we could put it on television all across this nation and on radio and have it on video so that when people order the tapes, they can see it with their own eyes, they can be warned. Are we under some kind of a curse? And is that why these things are happening to the United States of America? Once a country that was declared a Christian nation by a 9-0 vote of the Supreme Court of the United States. In Deuteronomy chapter 32 of your Bible, I want to give as a closing statements tonight one of the reasons why these things are happening to us. Because you see, if we break the Lord our God, who is Jesus Christ, according to 1 Corinthians 10, verse 1 to 4, if we break His laws and His statutes and become a sinful nation, He said that all of these curses would come upon us and that nothing would take us from it. What I want you to see is starting down upon about verse 42. Or 43. Rejoice, O you nation, with His people. Maybe I've got the wrong chapter. Yeah, I have. It's chapter 28. I'm sorry. 28, verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against you from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies. A nation whose tongue you shall not understand. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. Do you realize in every communist country in the world, which is controlled by the Illuminati, when a person reaches a certain age, they're considered useless eaters. They're exterminated. Any child that is born with a birth defect is automatically exterminated as a useless eater because they don't believe in our God, the true God of the Bible. They believe in evolution. They believe in reincarnation. You're not really dead. You're going to come back as something else at a later time. So they're doing you a service, getting you out of your misery now. You see, this is a religious matter of Satan the devil. And it makes all the difference in the world when you understand what's going on in the world today. Did you know that right now, while the communists are feigning weakness, they said as soon as America will disarm, then they will smash us with a clenched fist? They have been rolling out since Glasnost started in 1985 a new super submarine with 16 nuclear missiles every 37 days. And they've been spotted by the United States government offshore on the east and west of the United States. They said if they could not infiltrate the United States and take us over from within, then they would fight with nuclear warfare with a surprise attack. I believe that the United States of America, yes, is going to be imprisoned by a new world order. They've got the concentration camps set up. But I want to close the message tonight with one of the most revealing scriptures in the entirety of the Bible. There are going to be people that are God's people. They're going to have the Holy Spirit of God inside of their mind. They will listen to the Holy Spirit and the leadership of the Holy Spirit. They will not reject God's message. Do you know in ancient times when God called Israel to go out of Egyptian bondage, they went? Moses led them. Do you know when God spoke, whether it was verbally or by the Holy Spirit sending a message into the mind of Noah? We don't know. We weren't there, were we? Whichever was the case, Noah stepped out and did what God said. And when he went into that boat, God shut the door. And He saved the world on this side of the flood. There are people today called the very elect in Revelation or Matthew 24 verse 22. And it says in that verse that if the very elect were not alive on planet Earth today, God would allow the world to be blown up. Read verse 21 and 22 of Matthew 24. No flesh would be saved. And the Moffat translation says, alive. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Are you one of the elect? Do you want to be one of the elect? Do you want to be one of those individuals that God can count on to be so faithful with His law and His statutes, with His way of life, that He will look down and say, I want that person protected from what's about to come? In Revelation chapter 12 of your Bible is a very overlooked set of scriptures. In verse 12 it says Satan is cast out, and it says he's going to create havoc on planet Earth. Verse 13, and when the dragon saw that he was cast out into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. That's the church. And to the woman, that's the church, were given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness, unto her place, where she is nourished. And the Greek word means to fatten with food. A supernatural fleeing where Satan can't get his hands on you, where the New World Army can't touch you. And God Almighty, through miracles, just like He did Israel going through the wilderness, will fatten you. He will feed you so that you'll not starve. For a time, times and a half a time. How long will that end time system rule? 3.5 years. The mark of the beast will be enforced, and they're going to kill Christians by the massive millions. Not one will be raptured. Not one. The church is not prepared for what the teachers of it are telling them today. They're going to lose faith and turn one another in by the scores. And the true people of God, those who are really, really faithful, are going to be protected divinely. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as of a flood after the woman. In other words, the New World military apparatus will not like it, because God is going to protect somebody somewhere because of their faithfulness to Him, that He might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth, and when you look that word up in the Greek, it either means the entire globe or a region. And I believe this should have said, and the region helped the woman. The people of God is not going to be scattered all over the world. They're going to go into a place, into the wilderness. that God has prepared for them. And the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Why is this so important to every person if they're a genuine Christian? Because verse 17 says, and the dragon was wroth with a woman and went to make war with a remnant of her seed. There's some going to be divinely protected, others not, because they will not listen to the leadership of the Holy Spirit and follow it and get their hearts and minds right with God. Brethren, I believe that we are on the verge of occupation in this country. So make sure our lives are right with our God. Thank you.